We are told a story about the Great Pyramid of Giza, a story of a tomb, a monument built with copper chisels and brute force for a pharaoh named Khufu. But the details don't add up. The numbers are wrong, the angles are too perfect, the empty rooms are too quiet. What if the structure on the Giza plateau isn't a tomb at all? What if its true purpose was never meant for the ground, but for the sky? What if the most famous building in the world was designed as a beacon, a focused point of energy to signal something far, far away? The official history says it's a burial place, finished around 2560 BC, a project that took 27 years and 100,000 men. But the central chamber, the king's chamber, held no body? Ever. When the Caliph al-Ma'mun forced his way inside in the year 820 AD, breaking centuries of sealed silence, he found nothing. No treasure, no mummy, no inscriptions marking it as Khufu's final rest, just a granite box, empty. This is the story of the evidence that suggests the pyramid was a machine. If you value documented history that questions the standard narrative, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Giza Plateau Mapping Project and the published surveys of Sir Flinders Petrie. Now back to the story. The box itself is a problem. The coffer in the king's chamber is cut from a single block of rose granite. It's too big. The dimensions of the coffer are larger than the entrance passage leading to the chamber. It could not have been moved in after the pyramid was built. It had to be placed there first, and the pyramid built around it. Think about that. The very first piece of the puzzle. The centerpiece of the main chamber, Kitsunet, was not an afterthought. It was the starting point, the reason for the whole machine, and it was left open, unsealed. Flinders Petrie, the father of modern Egyptology, surveyed Giza in the 1880s. He was a man of science, of numbers. And the numbers bothered him. He found evidence of high-speed drilling into the granite, saws that must have been 9 feet long, tipped with jewels harder than quartz, cutting through one of the hardest stones on Earth. He calculated the drill marks showed a feed rate, the speed at which the drill advanced, that is hundreds of times faster than modern diamond-tipped drills. This was 4,500 years ago. What were they cutting with? And why was this level of industrial technology needed for a simple tomb? The king's chamber itself is an anomaly. It is built entirely of Aswan granite, a material sourced from over 500 miles to the south. Each block weighs between 25 and 80 tons. That's the weight of a modern battle tank, 100 of them. Raised over 200 feet in the air and fitted together so perfectly you can't slide a piece of paper between them. The roof of this chamber is made of 9 granite beams, totaling 400 tons. This is the engineering question nobody wants to answer. It's not about moving the blocks. It's about lifting them with precision. The official story says they used wet sand and ropes, 80 tons, lifted 200 feet, placed with millimeter accuracy. Then there are the so-called air shafts, 2 passages, each only 8 inches wide. Lead from the king's chamber up through the solid mass of the pyramid to the outside. 2 more led from the queen's chamber below, but stop before they reach the surface. For centuries, they were called air shafts, but they don't work for ventilation. They are angled strangely. In 1964, astronomers realized the southern shaft from the king's chamber pointed directly at Orion's belt, as it was positioned in 2500 BC. The northern shaft pointed to the pole star of that era, Thuban. These were not air shafts, they were star shafts, aimed like gun sights at specific points in the sky. Why does a dead pharaoh need a star alignment? Why does a tomb need a targeting system? The structure's very placement on the planet is baffling. The Great Pyramid sits at the intersection of the longest line of latitude and the longest line of longitude. It is at the exact center of the Earth's landmass. If you flatten the globe, the pyramid is the anchor point. This is not a coincidence you stumble upon. This requires a global survey. It requires knowledge of the entire planet's geography. The pyramid's base is aligned to true north with an accuracy of 3/60ths of a degree. We didn't achieve that level of precision in Europe until the 1700s. How did a Bronze Age culture map the planet and find its center? How did they find true north more accurately than we could until just a few centuries ago? They built mathematics into the stone. The ratio of the pyramid's height to its perimeter is the same as the ratio of a circle's radius to its circumference. It encodes the value of pi, not approximately, precisely. The measurements of the king's chamber encode the golden ratio, phi. These are not numbers you arrive at by accident. They are universal constants, the language of mathematics and physics, a message that any intelligent species would recognize. The message isn't in hieroglyphs on the wall. The message is the wall. The building itself is the communication. Let's talk about the original appearance. The pyramid we see today is a rough, tiered core, but it wasn't always like this. In Khufu's time, it was covered by 144,000 casing stones made of highly polished white Tura limestone. Each stone weighed 15 tons and was cut and fitted with a precision of 1/50th of an inch. They were angled to create a perfectly smooth, flat, reflective surface. The entire pyramid would have gleamed under the Egyptian sun like a single, massive jewel. An earthquake in 1303 AD loosened these stones, and they were later stripped to build the mosques of Cairo. But imagine it, a structure 48 stories high, covered in a mirror finish, sitting at the center of the world. What does that look like from above? It looks like a beacon, a landmark impossible to miss. The material science only deepens the mystery. The mortar used to set the casing stones has been analyzed. We can identify its components, mostly processed gypsum, but we cannot reproduce it. It is stronger than the stones it holds together. It created a chemical bond so tight that breaking the mortar meant breaking the stone itself. It made the 144,000 individual stones act as a single monolithic shell. This shell of non-conductive limestone covered an inner core made of a different kind of limestone, one with high magnesium content and a trace of crystal, which has different electrical properties. And at the heart of it, the chambers were made of Aswan granite, a stone rich in quartz. This is where the beacon theory takes shape. It was first seriously proposed not by mystics, but by an engineer, Christopher Dunn. He looked at the pyramid not as an architect, but as a machinist. He saw a power plant. The quartz in the granite has piezoelectric properties. That means it generates an electric field when put under pressure. The Great Pyramid contains millions of tons of stone, creating unimaginable pressure on the granite chambers at its core. The Giza Plateau is also known to have underground aquifers, rivers of water flowing through the limestone bedrock. The movement of this water creates telluric currents, a natural electrical energy within the earth. Dunn's theory suggests the pyramid was built to harness these natural energies. It could have drawn up the vibrations from the earth itself. The entire structure, from its dimensions to its materials, seems designed to resonate. The Grand Gallery, a long, tall, corbelled hallway leading up to the king's chamber, has 27 pairs of notches along its sides. Archaeologists have no good explanation for them, but engineers suggest they could have held resonators, devices designed to amplify a specific frequency. The entire gallery could have acted as a giant resonant cavity collecting and amplifying vibrations. These amplified vibrations would then be channeled into the king's chamber. The granite box, the sarcophagus, wasn't for a body. It was a frequency generator. The chamber itself, made of pure granite, would vibrate in sympathy, turning mechanical energy into electromagnetic energy. The star shafts were not for viewing. They were waveguides. They were designed to channel this energy, this focused beam of microwaves or radio waves, out of the pyramid and into space, aimed at a specific destination. Orion, think of it as a giant musical instrument. The Earth provides the hum. The pyramid's shape and underground chambers capture and amplify that hum. The Grand Gallery tunes it to a precise frequency. The King's Chamber converts it into a powerful signal, and the shafts broadcast it to the stars. This isn't magic. This is physics. It is acoustic engineering on a planetary scale. If you find this line of inquiry compelling, the kind of history that makes you think, then subscribe to the channel. It tells the platform you want more content like this, and it is the single best way to support what we do. This is not about belief, it's about evidence. Back to the details. The Queen's Chamber has its own mysteries. In 1993, a small robot named Upwat 2 crawled up one of its sealed shafts. After traveling nearly 200 feet, it was blocked by a small limestone door with 2 copper handles. And this was a stunning discovery. A sealed door, hidden deep inside the pyramid for 4,500 years. In 2002, a new robot drilled a tiny hole through this door. It found a small, empty chamber, and on the other side, another door, another block. What are they hiding? Why seal these passages so carefully? In a tomb, you seal the entrance. You don't build hidden doors deep inside the solid masonry, unless the passages weren't for people, unless they were part of a machine's circuitry. The copper handles, or pins, look exactly like electrodes. Then there's the heat signature. In 2015, an international team of scientists launched a project called Scan Pyramids. They used thermal imaging to map the pyramid. They found 3 major thermal anomalies, places where the temperature was significantly different from the surrounding blocks. The most prominent was at the base on the eastern side. It suggests either an internal air current or a different material hidden behind the first layer of stones. It's another part of the structure that makes no sense in the tomb model, but in the machine model, different materials with different thermal and conductive properties are exactly what you would expect. A circuit board made of stone. Let's reconsider the construction. The official story of 100,000 men dragging blocks for 27 years is based on a report by the Greek historian Herodotus, who visited Egypt 2,000 years after. The pyramid was built. He was repeating stories he was told. Modern calculations suggest the workforce was much smaller, perhaps 20,000 skilled workers and artisans, but even that number presents a problem. To place 2.3 million blocks in 27 years, they would have had to set one block every 2 minutes. 24 hours a day, every day. It's a logistical nightmare that defies explanation with Bronze Age technology, unless the technology wasn't what we think it was. Proponents of the beacon theory point to the possibility that the builders understood something about acoustics, about vibration that we have lost. Legends of priests using sound to levitate heavy objects are common in many ancient cultures. Could they have used resonant frequencies to reduce the weight of the massive stone blocks, making them easier to move and position? It sounds like science fiction, but the evidence of extreme precision, the perfect fits, the sheer scale of the lifting, all demand an extraordinary explanation. The standard model of ramps and ropes is simply not enough to explain the finished product. The Orion correlation theory, proposed by Robert Bauval in the 1990s, adds another layer. He demonstrated that the layout of the three pyramids at Giza perfectly mirrors the alignment of the three stars in Orion's belt. Not just their position, but their brightness is reflected in the size of the pyramids. Furthermore, the causeway leading from the second pyramid aligns with the sun on the spring equinox. The entire complex is a map of the sky, a map pointing to a specific time, 2500 BC, and a specific place, the constellation of Orion. The ancient Egyptians were obsessed with Orion. They called it Sa and associated it with the god Osiris, the god of rebirth and the afterlife. For them, this was the destination of the pharaoh's soul. But what if it was more literal? What if it wasn't just where souls went, but where their gods came from? A homing beacon aimed at their origin point, a signal saying, "We are here. We have achieved this. We are ready." Consider the materials again. The outer casing of polished limestone was an insulator. The inner core of dolomite was a semiconductor. The granite chambers at the center, filled with quartz crystals, were the power-generating core. This is a classic engineering design for a massive capacitor or a transducer, a device that converts one form of energy into another. The entire pyramid is layered like a circuit. Insulator. Semiconductor. Conductor. The purpose was to build up and discharge a massive amount of energy. A tomb does not need this design. A power plant does. The shafts in the Queen's Chamber, the ones blocked by the strange doors, also align with stars. One points to Sirius, the star of the goddess Isis, the other to Ursa Minor. These are not random. Every single alignment is deliberate, precise, and astronomical. The pyramid is a silent clock, its gears aligned to the cosmos. It tells a story not of one king, but of the stars themselves. It speaks a language of angles, ratios, and frequencies. We look at the pyramids and see a primitive culture's obsession with death. We see a monument to a king's ego, but this may be our own failure of imagination. We are projecting our own values onto a structure that may have had a purpose, so far beyond our own understanding that we can barely comprehend it. We see a tomb because that is what our history books tell us to see. But the evidence, the hard numbers, the material science, the impossible engineering all point in a different direction. They point up. The final, and perhaps most compelling, piece of evidence came in 2017. The Scan Pyramids team, using cosmic ray muon radiography, a technology that can detect voids and structures deep inside stone, announced a discovery that changed everything. They found a previously unknown chamber, a massive void, hidden above the Grand Gallery. It is at least 100 feet long, comparable in size to the gallery itself. It is empty. It is sealed. It has been untouched for 4,500 years. The official explanation: nobody has one. It doesn't fit into the architectural plan. It serves no structural purpose that we can identify. It is not a tomb. It is simply a massive, empty space at the heart of the machine. But in the context of a resonant power plant, a giant void like this is not an anomaly. It is a necessary component. It is a resonant chamber, a harmonic amplifier, a piece of the acoustic machinery required to make the entire structure sing. They have named it the Big Void. It's the biggest discovery at Giza in over a century, and it fits the beacon theory perfectly. We have spent centuries trying to understand the Great Pyramid as a house for the dead. We have looked for treasure and bodies and secret texts. But we have found only empty rooms, impossible geometry, and a silent alignment with the stars. Maybe we have been asking the wrong questions. Maybe it was never about who was buried inside. Maybe the real question is who it was built to talk to. They constructed a mountain of artificial stone, polished it to a mirror shine, placed it at the center of the world, and tuned it to the frequency of the Earth. They built it to last for eternity, a message in a bottle thrown into the cosmic ocean. The big void was just the beginning. In 2023, another scan revealed a hidden corridor 9 meters long behind the main entrance. Another piece of the puzzle, another empty space. We keep scanning, and we keep finding more of the machine. The pyramid holds its secrets tightly. A 481-foot tall instrument, waiting. Silent, pointed at Orion. We were told it was a tomb, but it looks like a transmitter. And the signal was sent a long, long time ago.